Hello everyone, this is Joshua Smith of Apollo's Artifact. I am recording this episode for a May or June release. This is going to be another entry in the Satanic Panic Reconsidered series, offering up more proof of ritual crimes. I call this entry, The Hearts of Darkness. Thoroughly documented cases of cult and occult involved crimes exist, despite the efforts of those who have constructed what Brown University professor Ross Chait refers to as the witch hunt narrative, and I refer to it as a broader trend of the Satanic Panic Mythos. Cases that were dismissed as the result of a mere moral panic or hysteria continue to occur. Not only have such cases continued, but evidence mounts showing that those who have constructed the narrative or mythos have not done their homework, indeed gotten numerous factual details wrong, often prejudicially dismissed evidence, and some have even been shown not to have performed as much investigation as they put on. On this account, please read Ross Chait's book for support to support this claim. The cases I am about to mention are significant because they reflect important aspects of ritual, small s satanic or devil worship related, and other occult crimes, all of which are points where so much denial still exists. The first regards a group called the Finders. The Finders cult first came to public notice in 1987 when a group of concerned parents in Florida noticed two well-dressed men in a park watching over a small group of unkempt children. The Tallahassee Police Department was contacted, and when they responded, they noted the children displayed unusual behavior. For example, they were unfamiliar with common household items, unfamiliar with certain common behaviors, yet the well-dressed men claimed that they were on the way to a, quote, smart school in Mexico, which by itself seems to be a little bit of a bizarre claim. The disheveled children sported numerous bug bites, were being transported in a van that contained a bed, and photographs suggestive of child exploitation would soon turn up later on during a search. The well-dressed men, who had several fake IDs, indicated all answers about the children could be answered by people in Washington, D.C. They were placed under arrest. As the sprawling investigation then expanded, it went on to include the U.S. Customs Office, the Washington, D.C. Police Department, the FBI, and even the CIA. If this isn't enough to raise a few eyebrows, many more bizarre aspects emerged. Possible ties to international child trafficking, animal sacrifice, travel to and from areas that were highly regulated during the Cold War, yet the Finders cult members had no problems in these sorts of travels. Evidence related to explosive device-making activities, secret storage facilities, investigations abruptly shut down, felony charges dropped, and much more besides. Among the most in-depth looks at this case can be found in a documentary by Derek Burrows of the Conscious Resistance Network titled, Who Will Find What the Finders Hide? Let's take a look at that now.
In our last documentary, we talked about powerful billionaire and registered sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, and showed how Epstein and his co-conspirators were able to escape punishment for their role in abusing over 40 young girls. We noted that Epstein and people like him do not act alone in their efforts to feed their depraved desires. In Epstein's case, he had an inner circle of people who helped him acquire young girls. In other cases, there exist networks of individuals helping to pressure or even kidnap young children and force them into sexual bondage. This time, we are going to explore the story of a cult that was suspected of international human trafficking in 1987. We ask, who will find what the Finders hide? As we examine the story of the Finders cult, I would like to make all of our viewers aware that everything in this film is documented and can be confirmed by looking at our transcript and sources. This story deals with accusations of satanic activity, child trafficking, and intelligence operations. We take these claims seriously and went to great lengths to confirm the information we are about to present to you. On a chilly February morning in 1987, an anonymous caller tells the Tallahassee Police Department that two well-dressed men are at a local park with 6 kids and a blue van. The children are described as looking disheveled with potential signs of abuse. Tallahassee police arrive and question Douglas E. Ammerman and Michael Houlihan. The two men say they are taking the kids to a school for brilliant children in Mexico. The men also say the children are being weaned from their mothers. Authorities eventually take the men and children into custody. A search of the van turns up 20 floppy computer disks, a TSR-80 computer, and a, quote, device that police say could be used to hook into a computer in another location by a telephone, end quote. Immediately, it becomes clear this case is not like any other. Following the arrests, the Associated Press reports that police had moved the 6 children from a shelter after receiving a half-dozen phone calls threatening the kids. The children were moved to an undisclosed location where they were being protected by armed guards. When interviewed by the police, the kids say the men are their teachers, that they have been living in a house with other children and adults. The police report also notes the kids are eating a raw food diet, covered in bug bites, and only fed as a reward for good behavior. The children are unaware of modern technology, including phones, televisions, hot water, staplers, typewriters, and electricity. The oldest child, Mary, says they receive instructions from a man they call a game caller or a game leader, the founder of the Finders, also known as Marion Petty. By Thursday, February 5th, Tallahassee police confirmed the children and men are a part of a group known as the Finders. U.S. District Court records in Washington indicate a confidential police source previously told authorities the Finders were a cult that conducted brainwashing techniques at a warehouse and apartment in Washington, D.C. This source tells of being recruited by the Finders with promises of, quote, financial reward and sexual gratification, end quote, and of being invited by one member to explore Satanism with them. At this point, officials with the U.S. Customs Service Agency joined the investigation due to suspicion that the potential crimes may have crossed state or national borders. The U.S. Attorney's Office and the Federal Bureau of Investigations are also said to be investigating the case. After learning the children are based in the D.C. area, the Tallahassee Police Department contacts D.C. Metropolitan Police to establish the identities of the children. Tallahassee police learn that D.C. police are already aware of the Finders. On Friday, February 6th, Virginia State Police raid a 90-acre farm owned by Marion Petty in rural Madison County, Virginia. Neighbors of the farm say children were often brought to the farm in vans, usually crying. An FBI report states that, quote, evidence of a satanic cult ritual was discovered, end quote. The same report notes that all reports regarding Finders are to be classified secret. Meanwhile, D.C. Metro Police and U.S. Customs Service agents raid other Finders properties, including a duplex apartment building and a warehouse in Washington, D.C. Police reports and articles from 1987 indicate that the D.C. police removed large plastic bags filled with color slides, photographs, and photographic contact sheets from the warehouse. Some of the photos were of naked children. U.S. Customs spokesman David Hoover tells the Post, quote, we're not saying it's pornographic, but it has all the earmarks, end quote. A U.S. Customs Service report describes some of the photos as showing blood rituals involving children slaughtering goats while adults in white robes watch. It also describes that they found instructions on how to purchase children. The importance of this report, written by U.S. Customs Service agent Raymond J. Martinez, will become clear as we move on. The Customs Service then claimed to be looking into allegations of child pornography. Police spokesman Scott Hunt states that the Finders may have, quote, been accustomed to selling or smuggling the children of its members out of the country, end quote. Then Captain William White of the D.C. Police Department declines to speculate on what the possibilities might be, but reports written by D.C. Police state that law enforcement believe the possibilities include kidnapping or some type of international market for children. Police investigator Cheryl Wignan says more than one of the children has been sexually abused, but she won't say exactly how many.
And it is here that I will move on from the Finders. Next, there was the satanic cult called Kroth, involved in murders that took place in a small town in Mississippi in 1997. In Pearl, Mississippi, Luke Woodham shot and killed 2 at his high school and wounded 7 others. As the investigation unfolded, authorities discovered that Woodham had murdered his own mother and belonged to an occult group. It is said that there were plans to commit more murders, to take over the entire school, to set a series of fires, and ultimately to escape. Finally, there is the case that may have been a primary inspiration for Season 1 of True Detective. Show creator, writer, and Southern native Nick Pizzolatto has suggested to reporters that they take a long, hard look into a case first reported on in 2005. Operating under the auspices of a church in Ponchatoula, Louisiana, a church that had crumbled from the evil that lurked within, a spine-chilling series of discoveries began to take place. The deepest and darkest evils were about to be brought to light. These included a satanic pedophile ring, devil-worshipping rituals, horrendous sex crimes, animal sacrifice, blood rites, animal blood drinking, and even bestiality.
This group of people were perpetrating very serious and just heinous acts against children.
What had begun as quiet whispers exploded into headlines in May of 2005. 7 members of the Hosanna church hierarchy arrested on charges of practicing occultic rituals involving sex with children. The pastor, Louis LaMonica, a former Tangipahoa Parish Sheriff's Deputy, Chris Labatt, and Austin Trey Bernard, the first wave of the arrests. People living near the church at the time knew something strange was going on. Tim Norman watched and took home video. Austin Trey Bernard is accused of 1 count of aggravated rape of a 2-year-old girl. The trial has been set and continued before, delayed by Hurricane Katrina, lengthy pretrial motions, and a slate of judges that must work 3 different parishes. But now, District Attorney Scott Perilou says jury selection is set to begin. On your side, Heath Allen, WDSU, News Channel 6.
A total of 7 people were indicted in the wake of the sex scandal at the now-defunct Hosanna Church in Ponchatoula.
According to evidence that I have compiled from trial documents and reports by the London Telegraph, New York Times, the AP, the Baton Rouge Advocate, and others, the Hosanna Church was led by Pastor Louis LaMonica Jr. LaMonica's father had been a very successful pastor. Having built his congregation to some 1,000 folks, the attendance plummeted under his son's leadership. Rumors swirled of, quote, witchcraft and the entry of the enemy into the church. In the spring of 2005, Nicole Bernard absconded the church and Louisiana to Ohio. Nicole was the wife of LaMonica's close associate, Austin Bernard. What she was to reveal would shake the community to its very core. No one would be able to believe it later as the horrors unfolded. Nicole reported that she went to Ohio in order to protect her own child from the massive amounts of child sexual abuse taking place in the church and at the homes of some of the church members. A few weeks after this, LaMonica himself strolled into a sheriff's office and proceeded to languidly report how he and other church members had been raping children and engaging in bestiality regularly for at least 4 years. The child rapes included that of his own sons. According to LaMonica's videotaped confession to detectives and a highly detailed and incredibly disturbing 260-page handwritten journal documenting the extensive horrors, the church's couple of dozen congregates converted their worship from God to Satan in 2000. A bizarre ceremony was conducted where a baby was set inside of a pentagram. An animal was sacrificed and its blood poured over the child. As his jaw-dropping confession continued, LaMonica admitted both men and women had participated in the grotesque acts of sexual abuse. Prosecutor Don Wall, a DA for the parish, stated that just reading the confessional journal and other church members' written pleas for forgiveness wore him down. Only able to digest a few pages at a time, Wall eventually made it through the entirety of the mind-boggling evil contained therein. Wall was also smart enough to be aware of the overwhelming rhetorical power of the Satanic Panic Mythos and witch hunt narrative. Wall said in relation to this, quote, I had McMartin, the California preschool scandal, thrown in my face a lot during all of this. That's the main reason I kept this devil-worshipping stuff to a small portion of the trial. Worshipping the devil is not illegal. Child molestation is. That's what I focused on. Wall's strategy mirrored that of the prosecution of Frank Fuster by Janet Rito's prosecutors. That is to say, an approach that hones in on the tangible evidence rather than the sensationalistic aspects that a defense team and the media can convert into distractions. As I have shown time and time again in my previous episodes, members associated with the False Memory Syndrome Foundation often capitalize on such distractions in order to tank entire trials. LaMonica's sons had even chronicled their father's abuse to therapists, psychiatrists, and other agents on film, a la the McMartin case. Also, like the McMartin case's many victim witnesses, they refused to testify in court at trial. Luckily, due to Nicole Bernard's report, LaMonica's multiple confessions and journal, and the admission of Christopher Labatt as a churchgoer and deputy sheriff that he had child pornography on his home computer, the reign of terror could be stopped. 8 boxes of hooded black robes were also confiscated. It was thought that more than 20 children had suffered abuse there. Other odd things were also notable. For instance, a neighbor of the church was forced to intervene, church leaders attempting to baptize children in a nearby creek that was frequently occupied by numerous alligators. Everything good that was built up by his father had been ruined by the junior LaMonica. During his taped confession, LaMonica said that he and his parishioners had openly invited demonic entities to fill them and their church with evil, and the evil flowed. Some of the parishioners even lived in the church, which had become nothing more than a den of iniquity. Many things stand out about this case. For example, since courts of law are thoroughly secularized institutions, it points up the necessity of demonstrating the crimes rather than the sensationalistic motives for the heinous actions. Lock down those acts in the confessions and the testimonies and minimize the other components. Those are the best practices to secure convictions. Next, it is key here to note that the perpetrators had no crucial connections to power, no links to the governor, no links to the major media, no links to other important institutions within the community, and certainly not with the FBI or CIA, and so on. What we have seen over and over again in the series on the Satanic Panic Reconsidered is that when lots of money, political power, and influence are combined, the cases often spin out of control. They then become easy fodder for defense teams, the media, and the crafters of the witch hunt narrative. The three cases that I just reviewed chronologically range from 1987 to 2005. Geographically, they involved Mississippi, Louisiana, Florida, and Washington, D.C. In these cases, there are a series of similarities and differences to the period of the so-called Satanic Panic and witch hunt hysteria, which I suggest ranges from about 1983 to 1991, give or take a couple of years on either end. Furthermore, I think they help demonstrate some of the numerous problems with the McMartin case: sloppy investigation, lack of clear communication during interviews, sloppy prosecution, and calamitous public relations through the media. Additionally, these situations show how problematic it is to try to blanket the witch hunt narrative from McMartin and then transpose that onto unconnected cases that have very different problems, different perpetrators, different investigators, and different prosecutors. All too often, the Satanic Panic Mythos is appealed to try to get convictions overturned on the claim that there was a rampant hysteria that did not care for the truth. However, it is incredibly prejudicial to lump together dozens of such cases for mere rhetorical effect or for a whole host of other differing motives. Only by real investigation rather than superficial glances and list-like inclusions that lead to pronouncements can we ever get to the truth of the matter. This must be done on a case-by-case basis rather than sweeping broadsides tossed around like cudgels against assumed enemies that may not even be there. Notable, too, about this is that there were no sweetheart deals cut for the principal violators, contrary to the deals made with the rich and powerful like Epstein, David Asimov, the son of Isaac Asimov, and Peter Citron of the Franklin cover-up. And on one final note, the defense team tried to call in hired gun Dr. Richard Offshee of the False Memory Syndrome Foundation. Time and again, we see these cases that have the FMSF founders, board members, and associates become involved at some point. Offshee was ultimately blocked because his expertise was deemed to be little more than common sense that a trial jury could figure out on their own. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.